Y'all already know what it is. It's your boy Carlito the Cannon.
Cannon.
I was wondering. I was like, there was a delay there. You
it.
slapped. One half of the double dose of knowledge, 66 and 2/3 of the Carolina Wrestling Cartel, and 1/4 of the illustrious Iconics. We bringing y'all something very, very, very special today. And on my left is what's your name, bro?
Remember, that is my drink of choice, not my weight. It's exponentially more.
And this is your boy Blackout Jones, the historian. Hey man, let's get ready for a great show.
You know what? And it's wild that you say the historian, because today we are going to take that word and expound upon it exponentially. I feel like getting my thesaurus on today.
Yeah, you in one sentence.
You know, look, Mr. SAT. For part 2 of this episode, man, we've already had part 1 today, went really well, but we are focusing on the belt hobby, the belt industry. We all love professional wrestling. That's why y'all watch us weekly. That's why y'all listen to us, support us, buy the merch. Keep buying the merch. But more than anything, there is a love of certain things inside of the hobby and certain things inside of the industry, and that is of these things here. Championship belt collecting has been around for decades. I personally cannot say I know anyone more knowledgeable in the aspect of the collection game than this guy right here. Mr. Dan McMahon, welcome to Beyond the Bell.
Well, thanks guys for having me. I appreciate it.
If you have any type of knowledge of belt collecting, you know who this man is, even at the basic level of it. But tonight we're going to get into something that I haven't really had a chance to see anywhere else. And that is, we're going to start talking about some of these belts that are out here that y'all are actually collecting and love, the history behind some of these designs, the significance and importance of some of these belts that have been lost, stolen, worn. Some of the collection that's out here with Conrad and some of the other stuff that's going on, this guy has knowledge upon knowledge of it. So welcome to the show, first and foremost. Thank you for everything you do for the industry, bro, because I got a couple of them that you make. I'm not going to break my IWGP out because I got a replica.
Nice. Well, yeah, well, I've been here long enough to know, it's never going to be, everybody has their own idea of what collecting is to them. Mm-hmm. And I think at the end of the day, everyone's here for the same reason. And, I have my preference on what I think collecting should be, and other people have their preference on what they think it should be. But, I think at the end of the day, everyone should agree on collecting for the love and just not doing it to steal or take away money from other people. But, you got to get stuff the way you got to get it. And, I understand a lot of what's happened, especially in the last 5 to 10 years. But at the same time, you take the good with the bad. We have some of that stuff going on, but there's so many new people invested in the hobby. There's so many people who, like you guys, are like reaching out, asking questions, trying to learn the history. So it's not maybe 1 or 2, 3 people dropping knowledge on this belt, that belt, the community as a whole just exploded, and everybody's just like a sponge. And you go to a lot of these good sites and a lot of these good groups, and don't matter what your preference is, there's still people who know their history and know their belts. So I'm just happy that the love of the game and the hobby is all spread out, and that there's so much interest in it now.
Wow, see, and that's why we wanted to bring you on, even just you starting off with that, man, because it's, like you said, it's exploded the last 5-10 years, because I can remember, and we talked about this earlier with some of the other collectors, I remember flipping through WWF Magazine and WCW Magazine to the Figures Inc. page and just seeing the layout of it. And just it kind of just like, one day I'm going to have me one of those. You never know when it starts, because like I said earlier, once you buy your first one, there is no going back. It's if you're a wrestling fan, if you're a fanatic, if you love the fandom, when you hold that first one in your hands, man, yeah, it's an addiction that you just can't really. So in my group, in the wrestling social media groups and everything, they call me the Belt Godfather, because I got a lot of people started on their first belt. I'm like, I bought mine and I went crazy. And they were like, well, how do you? I'm like, dude, listen, Klarna it if you got to. You know, if you got a payment over it, do what you got to do. Get you one, man. Black, I know you had a couple questions for where you want to start off at, bro.
All right. So once again, thank you for coming on to Beyond the Bell podcast. We definitely appreciate it. My first question is, what was your first replica that you owned?
All right. First replica I owned. We're going back 2000, 2001. So back then, there was only a few sites selling the replica belts. Most of the time you go on eBay, or back then it was the Yahoo groups. And we're going to start rolling stories in the stories here. On eBay, there was this person who was always selling the WCW and the ECW belts for really good prices. Guy's name was David Korn. Okay, so every once in a while on some of these random sites, you might see somebody making a joke about David Korn or being in a Taz version. His big thing was every version of the ECW replica was the Taz version. So for those who don't know, the original Figs Inc. ECW heavyweight came in two variants: the one with the blue globe and the one with the black globe and the orange paint. That was the Taz version. But for some reason, because they say Taz, David Korn called all of them the Taz version, regardless of globe color. But anyway, I was a big ECW fan. Look on eBay. David Korn's running a 2-for-1 special. The ECW heavyweight non-Taz version and a WCW United States for $189.
Okay. Both. Which US? Because I'm big on the WCW US.
The 3-plate.
I don't mind it. I don't mind it, but I'm a 5-plate guy. I look here we go. Here we go. I mean, look at it.
This is the one you're a fan of.
Look at it. Like, it screams prestige to me.
Right. And like, it's one of those things where, like, what's the difference between this and something overseas? All right. Reggie Parks, #1 serial.
#1 serial.
Serial number 1. But like, there's some things that are inaccurate on this. And, that's one of those things where you learn your history. You have to go back, and Reggie would never really remember how he did the same belt twice. So when you were ordering a belt from Reggie, you'd have to specify, hey, I want this tooling style. I want you to do the snaps this way. I want you to do the border that way. Where like a lot of people started turning to Dave Milliken because Dave was a belt fan just like us. So if you would name a belt, Dave knew the exact tooling style. Like, he could recreate it. You don't have to spell anything out for him. Whereas Reggie's just the artist. He would just do what he felt that day. So you would have to remind him when you're ordering copies, like, this is how we want it. So, like, for example, there's no white paint on the ring used one in the American flag right here. It was all red. So that's one of those little things that, like, this is the way it should look, but whatever day Reggie was painting, maybe he was out of paint, so he just did the whole thing red.
Wow. And look, the name drop is crazy, because it's like, there's people, and I know today there's people that are still waiting on a Reggie Parks that they paid for and that they ordered from 5, 7, 10 years ago. Yeah. But owning a Parks or a Milliken is kind of, it's upper echelon in the hobby. I mean, if you have one, it's something that kind of,
right,
it matters to people who are in the hobby. You have a few of them though, don't you?
Yeah, I was, like everyone, I started as a collector. I started with the replicas, and then you would get the replicas, and eventually it wasn't enough. And at one point, a lot of collectors' goal is to, I want this, I want that, I want everything. And they're just buying everything all at once. And then once you have them, like, that kind of takes the joy out of it.
Yeah.
So what happens is, now what is your next step of being that collector, of being that enthusiast? All right, well, now I'm going to go for handmade belts instead of mass-produced replicas. You get to your handmade belts. All right, now I want authentic, where you're only looking for Reggie or Dave or Jamar. And then, if you have that money to spend, you get to that upper echelon, then you're like, Dan, I want ring used. All right, I know your network. This is the offer. You know who has this. This is my budget. See what you can do. And that's
Listen.
there's collecting for everybody at every level. It just like some people up here and some people down here, and it's like, well, everybody's all here for the same reason, but someday everybody starts here. Nobody really comes out here because like even Conrad started with figs and replicas and worked his way up. So
so with the figs replicas, because I remember back then there being the standard replica, and then they started moving into like, because I remember my first replica was an ultra deluxe, undisputed, and I mean I still remember opening that package and being like, it's not gonna get any better than this, but that's what 3 millimeter plate maybe, I think.
The original figs were 2 millimeter.
Well, 2 millimeter
the first
plate.
Fig Gold was 1 millimeter, and like they knew that wasn't good from the get. So at least the ones after that they did 2 millimeter, and then they got better. Yeah, figs. As collectors, we've had a love-hate relationship with them. We love them because they gave us mass-produced copies of the belts we saw at TV. But then some of the reasons like we tend to hate them or dislike them is because a lot of the people there were not belt enthusiasts the way we are. So they didn't know people wanted curved plates, people wanted thick plates, people wanted the weight and durability. They don't want a stiff strap. And being a fan back then and knowing what I wanted as a collector for a mass produced product to happen, and then 25 years later working with AEW as the intermediate between them and their manufacturer for their replica belts, now I have a better understanding of this is why they don't curve them as deep. This is why the straps are as stiff as they are. You're trying to mass manufacturing appeal. You're trying to keep at a certain price point, and you're trying to deliver a certain quality. So we can take the quality way up, but you're going to pay a lot more. We can get the price a lot cheaper, but the plating isn't going to look as shiny. There's not going to be as much weight to it. So trying to find that delicate balance of cost and value for the collectors is what all the replica companies are trying to do, regardless of who makes it or what. So I think a lot of people tell you guys are spoiled. If you're just jumping into the hobby now, you're spoiled.
Yeah,
you have it made. You have everything at your fingertips. So just don't be too picky about it. Enjoy it.
Yeah.
Right.
So my next question: what was your first commissioned design?
First commissioned design. So making belts, a lot of the time it was, can you do this for me? Can you do that for me? And most of the people come at you and it's like, oh, I want it to look like this. What's your take on this? Like the first one where they just said, all right, have at it, was probably the NWA US belt. And then it's belt I don't like. The one that, no, not that one.
Oh, I was about to, you don't like the
Which
Luger?
one?
The one
Oh,
that
you don't like that
one that
one?
NWA is using now. Okay.
Oh,
So
okay.
it's the one that's shaped like the United States on the red leather.
Oh, okay, like the national, things like the national American.
Oh,
Yeah.
They call it the national, but it was based off of the 70s US.
Yeah.
Like when Billy and his guys came, they gave a rough outline, and originally that flag, that motif, that was like a sub clip art piece somewhere else on the belt, and like he completely ignored the rest of the belt and said, oh, that's the belt from the 70s. I go, yeah. He goes, I want that belt. And then like it kind of, like I was commissioned to design something, and then put all the work and all the time into it, and then the client sees it and they're like, no, I want that one little picture. And it's like it gets frustrating, but then you start seeing what their vision, the client's vision is. And that was a big part of going from a collector and a fan to the business side, where it's like, as a collector, as a fan, you see all these new belts debut on TV, and it's real easy to say, oh man, this sucks. This should have been this color. That should have been that color. You need more paint. dual plated, this, that, and the other stuff. Now, when you're the guy where they're saying you need to make this for us, or we'll find somebody else, do you want that job? Do you want to make that money? Do you want the name recognition that comes along with it? So then you have to start compromising. And that's what everything is. All business is a compromise. So, he wants it to look reminiscent of the 70s belt. Okay, well, certain aspects of that we can't recreate in the time frame. So we come to a compromise. Okay, you want custom side plates now. You want this to say that. All right, we start working. Is it what I originally would do for it? No, I had a different vision for it. But at the end of the day, I don't pay the bills. The people who come to me have their own companies. They have a title in mind and they have a design in their head. And my job is to take what's in their head and make it into a physical item, regardless of whether or not I think it's appealing to myself.
Okay. That's another.
That's amen.
Yeah, that's the. Oh,
Yeah.
you know what? You got three. You have three. I forgot about that other one, Ron. That's so do that 3-piece. That's wow. So 211. I know we were talking, and the questions you had, the two you have are the ones I kind of wanted to ask and get some information on, because me being a part of the hobby there for 20 plus years now, and that's not to say like, oh, I've been doing this and I've been collecting, but I mean, like I said, I got my first replica and it never stopped. I've traded some. I don't want to say that one out loud, but I traded a winged eagle that you probably should not have ever traded, that I should still have in my collection. And it happens. I mean, and I know, Dan, you can definitely agree with that. Like, sometimes you'll have something and you don't know what it's going to mean 10, 15 years later to someone in the hobby or to yourself even, and trying to get it back or track it down, or even try to get back the same value you might have got out of it when you try to get it back. You're not going to, just because, like he said, we're spoiled as a hobby, as a collective in the hobby now. But what was your questions too?
Yeah, like everybody been saying. First of all, pleasure to meet you. I'm new to this game. You know what I'm saying? You see, I got the one behind me right here.
Right.
That's my first one. I just love it. But they got me on, like you said, The Godfather, all that good old stuff. So thank you for being here.
Yeah.
But first question is, what is your favorite design that you've created?
I want to know.
The favorite design that I created, and I guess it's kind of a cop out, but the Owen Hart belts mean a lot, even though it's, you could say it's kind of cheating because it was based off of the Stampede art, okay, which is Stampede Wrestling.
I didn't know that.
And, I always had that art. I had that art made a long time ago, because that was like one of those few belts that's like, if you ever have free time, I'm going to make myself this belt, I'm going to make myself that belt. And it never happens. But I got to the point of the artwork, and I've always offered it to people who have asked. And to be honest, like that belt, if you were to make it like it was made originally, would be very expensive, because the leather strap was done like an old Western saddle. So like there's carved floral designs in it and a lot of intricate detail, and detail takes time, and time costs money. So, trying to, normally if I'm putting 4 hours into a strap, okay, that's included in your price. But if you're having me do a belt for you where I might have to take 8 to 12 hours just doing leather alone, then it's like,
Jesus,
what is the cost, value of your time? Like, there's a point where it's just not financially worth it to take on some of these types of projects that people have. And it's a good opportunity for people who are coming up or who want to make a name for themselves, that, hey, you're not going to make a lot of money doing this belt, but if you nail it, you'll make a name for yourself really soon. So
okay,
there's belts that I could make, I just choose not to because it might not be worth it. But with the Owen Hart belts, it means a lot to me because, like AEW specifically had an idea in mind for Owen, and like we started going back and forth and spitballing with it, and like the whole time we were on the same page. And even Martha Hart, she was involved with it too. All the designs had to be approved by her. She had input into it too, and she signed off on it. And the biggest thing was when the first year when the belts got delivered, and Dr. Hart was there with Owen's son, and I said, I didn't care about who won it. I didn't, how did she like it? And she loved it, and Oj loved it, and that was kind of like, all right, I did good, because it's a lot of pressure. Some of these belts are going to be more pressure than others. It's not to take away anything of it, but when you get let's say, like, all right, New Japan says you're going to replace probably the greatest looking belt of all time. We're going to have you replace it, but you can't design it. We already have it designed. Here's the design.
Oh, wow.
Make it. If you can't make it, we're moving on. I was like, well, can I make some suggestions? It's like, well, so like I had to take watercolor, because the designer of the V5 is a famous anime graphic designer in Japan. He has a whole book of all of his designs. And if you look at it, like, some people call it like the Transformers belt, but once you start understanding that the person who designed it comes from that Japanese anime style of design, and you can start seeing, oh, okay, well, that's where the influence came from.
Wow.
Right.
So it's like I have to take watercolor, make it into belt art, and then give it the depth and give it all the dimensions that they want with the plating and the shadows. And their one rule to me was no black paint. I was like, because I hate just dual plated personally, like, as a fan. I don't like dual plated belts that are just dual plated. You can't read what they say. You don't pick out any of the design and the details in it unless you're holding it 2 feet from your face. My preference as a designer or as a belt maker is when the person wearing the belt is walking down the aisle and your camera, hard cam on them from 10, 15 feet away, I should be able to make out all the important details and wording of the belt. And I feel like, while dual-plated belts are beautiful in their own right, I feel like, depending on the sense of the use of it in the company, you need paint to accentuate the details. So,
yeah, you know what? I'm looking at my winged eagle now, and I'm like, I mean, it's dual. Like, you have the blue glow, but the black paint definitely makes the banner
pop.
Wow.
Right.
Okay. Wow.
So, like, I'm looking at the new WWE belt, the one behind Trey.
Here.
Beautiful belt. Yes. Okay. When you first got that belt, you looked at it and you saw all the details in that swirl work, and then you saw the leaf and the florals. It kind of looks like the Monster Energy can floral in the background.
Oh wow, yeah.
Details, right?
Right.
You don't see that on TV. It doesn't come across television like that. And a lot of that has to do with the lighting, especially in the arena. So, like, some people think the Undisputed belt was two-tone gold for a while. It wasn't. It was a combination of the way it was etched and the way TV lighting works off of that. So that's another thing too. When I was doing belts for New Japan and doing belts for Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, they did different presentation setups in the ring and had to adjust the lighting to make the belt look, get a better pop to it, or mute it out if there was too much shine. So, like, this is stuff what would be collectors are not thinking about that, but a wrestling company needs to think about that. It's a beautiful belt. It's a beautiful design. Most of it is lost unless you're holding it in front of your face. So I think paint is an easy solution to convey the detail across on TV. But that's
okay. Well, so and then when you were mentioning that, so I took an Elite and sent it off to Richard, and they were like, "You got something done to your Elite?" And I'm like, "Yeah," because I wasn't an overly fan of the belt anyway. But it's a big gold variant. I love it, but I ended up adding some stuff to it, and I saw, like, not even paying attention to you saying the black paint. I did it and didn't even realize that it makes the championship banner actually, you can see it now.
Right.
You see the depth, detail, and the difference.
Was not paying attention to that at all.
Right. So, like, even not using pure black paint like that. If you look at a lot of model workers and a lot of people who work on figurines, it's like a dulled down black paint that's like a little bottle. And because it's diluted, it's not black. It almost looks more like a antique, or more like a varnish. Not a varnish. More like a antique finish. So, for example, you take that and you drop a little bit of it in the florals of the new World Heavyweight Championship, and you'll start seeing those characters visually pop out. Then, like,
because it is a busy main plate. You're right. Like looking at it, it's beautiful, but it's busy. Like I love the lions, I love the grip, but it's really busy.
Right. So that's why I'm such a huge advocate for paint, because the designs are really, really good on a lot of these belts, but they just don't come across on television properly. So, I'd say let us use more paint.
More paint.
More paint. I mean, I'm a fan of paint. I like the paint mods. Even with the US, like adding some blue in the top of the banner made a difference for mine. I was like, man, that actually, wow, okay.
The first thing I thought about when he said that was the new World Tag Team belts, because they got the same thing like yours, but I believe it's red paint. I might be lying.
Yeah,
but you can see it. It pops. You know what I'm saying?
But the SmackDown versions, with it just being basic black, it just kind of
it's dull.
It needs some color.
Dull looking.
Those SmackDown belts have been sitting in storage for a few years. So that's why all of these new belts,
exclusive.
All of these new belts have that 3D specific texture design. Like you could see it with the women's belt. You saw it with the United States belt. You saw it. Mm-hmm. But then they bring out these new tag team belts for SmackDown that are 2D etched, traditional, and like they've had those for a few years. And I kind of mentioned it a few years back on Twitter about it. And I believe those designs were made around the time where, let's say, Shane McMahon was tag team champions with like Drew McIntyre or somebody.
Or Miz. Yeah. Oh my God. Wow. With Miz. So they've been sitting there for a while.
Yeah. And that actually happens with them all the time. Like, this isn't just a WWE thing. Every wrestling company that I've worked with or know people in tend to have random belts laying around that either were not used or plans changed or they didn't like how the final product looked, so they went in a different direction. But like if you're lucky enough to take the WWE warehouse tour, I'm told that they have the big bin, and you've probably seen pictures of it online,
of the belts,
all of the old ring used belts. And some people with keen eyes can pick out a few belts that never saw TV, like the ECW belt that was made for CM Punk to use that they never used. If you search some of those pictures online, you will see it in there. It's a silver belt. It's got a nameplate that says CM Punk, and the side plates are chain link, and the background looks like diamond plate. So, but it's a small belt.
This is why this episode has been so, because there's been years where I followed this dude on Twitter, and he'll say, well, this replica is coming to shop maybe a year from now, maybe 2. He'll say it. And then you wake up at 9 a.m. on a random Tuesday morning and it's there, and it's exactly how he described it. It's what it was. And people were just like, damn, like, how did you know this? So it's like the wealth of knowledge he has, even if it's, like just looking at not even just inside info, but like there's a different level of knowledge the deeper you get into the hobby when you start talking to people like a Dan McMahon, where I didn't even know that there was a CM Punk variant of an ECW championship.
Yeah. The companies with the money to spend, they'll buy belts. They'll see how things look. If they don't like it, just go somewhere.
Yep.
Never to be seen. And then 10 years later, somebody with a cell phone takes a picture, puts it online, and then you finally get the story. I mean, the big thing over the last year was the Hogan 86 mystery belt, and it's like, well, there's a few of us who knew about it, but it didn't become a big thing until the last year, where if the right Twitter account gets a hold of it or the right YouTube video mentions it, then it starts getting traction, and then you have all these people asking like, hey, where the hell did this belt come from? It's like, yeah, for 3 weeks in November 1986, Hulk Hogan used a special belt. Like you kind of like, but that's the thing, like having new people, it's great. And now when that question gets answered, I don't have to answer it because there's 15 people who've done their own research. Like, I didn't know it was 3 weeks. Somebody else who actually did the research watched WWE Network and said the first showing was at this house show, the last showing was at this house show. Hulk Hogan and Paul Orndorff, 2 of it. It's like, all right, you guys you fact check, you go with it now. Like you're teaching me, which is great. So the more people involved, the more eyes you get on it, the more people to research, and we all can uncover the history of all these belts as they pop up.
That's a beautiful thing. That's
a beautiful thing. I love this hobby. God, I love this hobby.
Love
exactly.
it.
So that leads into my second question. You see behind me, I got the Undisputed Jump made famous by John Bradshaw Layfield. That's my favorite wrestler. But anyway, that's my favorite design. These brothers, I'm the only one of us who only has one belt. And the one belt I got is my favorite design. So what is your overall favorite design that you've ever seen? It can be one you've done. Oh, he already see it. The Intercontinental right there.
It's a classic.
I love it.
Yeah, it's more of like when I saw growing up, the Intercontinental title was the best wrestler. Some people said it was like a runner-up award because Hogan was always going to be the champion. Like I got to that certain level where I started getting older, and I was like, all right, enough Hulk Hogan. I hate Hulk Hogan. And then whoever yeah. So like now I became like I was watching for the Intercontinental Championship. My first live pay-per-view was SummerSlam '91 in the Garden, and after Brett won the belt, I wanted to leave. My mom's like, I paid a lot of money for these tickets. We ain't going nowhere. Sit down. You're gonna watch this. And then like by the time the wedding came on, I was like, I still have to watch Hogan after this. I want to go. Let's get like. But that's the thing. Like the Intercontinental belt always meant something, and I think it's because of the way the champions carried it. Especially you have Brett, Bulldog, Mr. Perfect. They all held it in such high regard. Macho Man, like you could say that Honky Tonk Man was a terrible champion. You could say Honky Tonk Man was a poor wrestler, but he still carried the belt with prestige. And when Warrior squashed him, it was a huge deal.
Yeah, it was.
My dad still loves
the champion makes the belt. You can have a great belt design and have a real bunch of bad wrestlers with it, and it doesn't mean anything. We've had a lot of really, I'd call them ugly belts that have a lot of meaning to people because of who held them and what feuds they were used in. And with the Intercontinental belt, it was the workhorse belt. It was a simple design, but everybody who held that design treated it like it was the most important belt in the company. And you could say some of the best matches in WWF history happened for that belt. So that's coming from me as somebody who grew up in that late 80s, early 90s WWF era, and
that golden era.
Yeah, you call it the golden era.
Well, so golden moving into reality. Yeah, right. Yeah.
But it's kind of funny now. Like now that I'm getting older, it's like that's the only wrestling that matters. And it's like there's a generation. There is a generation who got into wrestling when John Cena was champion.
Yeah.
All they've known their whole life was John Cena and Randy Orton. And it's kind of like I have to sit back because there's the way we look at the winged eagle with these big eyes or the big gold or whatever. There's people who are going to be looking at the spinner belt and saying, that was my childhood. My heroes held that belt. And it's like, you want to make fun of them at the same time. It's like, well, who am I to talk? Like, it's just the way you look at things when you were that certain age.
Right. To the extreme belts. That's it. He said today, the spinner. So actually in his top 3, the first 2 belts are the spinner and the rated R spinner. And I was just like, but like you said, that during that time, he was a huge Cena fan. So, I mean, it makes sense. When you say the IC, do you have a preference to the white or the black strap?
The black strap.
Okay.
Yeah. I like
Steamboat, Savage, Bret, Piper.
I like the Bret Hart version. Yeah, the Bret, the Piper. I don't like the WrestleMania 3 one because of the inverted etching. All the side plates are the same size. There's no tooling. No logo plate, no tip. The WrestleMania 3 belt, a lot of people like it because of the red WWF logo, but
and with the brasso finish and
I like this one, and Reggie does a specific cut with it, and it's really, really interesting. Like if you have the replica, the way it tapers the main plate, it's just going to look curved.
Hear this? Listen to the depth.
Listen to this.
I mean, it's kind of tough to explain. So like, this is what we look for with like Reggie's work. The way this
Oh man.
paper. You see how sharp
Yeah.
the line is here?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh
A
wow.
lot of people can do re-leathers, but there's only a few guys who do it with that type of attention to detail and accuracy. And you know, if I could do that type of leather work, I'd be a lot better at what I do. But there are other people out there who can do it like that, who have the attention to detail and who can do it. But little intricacies like that, it's like that's why I like this specific variant of a belt rather than the one held by XYZ. So
Okay.
And I just want to say one thing real quick to harp on what you said, because you said there was a lot of ugly belts that people hold with prestige. That hit hard for me because I absolutely do not like the one that they have now. But the way Gunther carried it for years,
I love
it made me look at it different. I was just like, maybe it's not that bad.
It's not. Well, but that belt's missing. But that belt is missing some stuff. It's missing some paint in the globe. Because you remember the white variant I showed you on the white strap, blue globe with a little green. It's missing a few pops in it that'll make it stand out even more too. Because it's kind of like a fusion of the one that he loves mixed with a little of the oval, mixed with there's a bunch of belts that are meshed into that belt. That if you love belts total, you kind of see a bunch of the different details that's in it.
Yeah, I love the oval one. If they brought that back, I'd be a happy
camper. He's an oval guy. I don't, and I said it earlier, I don't understand the infatuation with the oval I see for a lot of people. That's the thing.
It was just different. It was just different. It was just like you look at it. One, it was purple. I was just like, I haven't seen that. You know what I'm saying? I was like 12 years old. And it was oval shaped. I mean, it just looked cool.
Right.
But I feel like a lot of people look back at it with revisionist history. Like at 12 years old, you didn't like it. But you're a grown man now, so just look at it for what it was.
It's the same thing we talked about with, I don't even know where I'm going here. V4 and V5. It doesn't matter what the fifth belt
there is a different, like. Yeah.
It's replacing such a great belt. This is always going to get crapped on for the rest of its existence.
Yeah.
And this belt is considered, again, probably one of the top 5 designs of all time.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't matter what replaced it. The design was going to get trashed. So the stuff with like people suddenly taking a liking to the oval IC, I think you're seeing what's going to happen with some of these belts. When you get a nice belt that people love forever, people don't like change. So they're always going to hate on it. And then eventually it just kind of like, like a mold that just grows on them. And
you just kind of accept it and it is what it is.
You move on. But like that's how some people feel about the oval IC. But if you grew up with the oval IC, that's your belt. And then the whatever stuff came after with Gunther, now maybe you're hating that design. But
oh no, I hate
a lot of people hate that design.
Gunther carried that one. He made it prestigious to me, like you said, like the way he carried it. He called it the Intercontinental Heavyweight Championship. No one's ever done that, as far as I know. And I was just like, hey. He doing the doggone thing with this.
Right.
So maybe I maybe I do like this belt a little more. But now it's on Sami Zayn and I'm just like, yeah, it's ugly.
Whatever.
That Intercontinental title right there. Everybody, they talk about Macho Man, Bret Hart, Piper, like you stated. But they never mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, Tito Santana was the first one to have that belt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
And Macho Man beat him. I want to say it was either in Boston or New York. I think he beat him in the Garden for that title.
Look at his story.
Tito
had that the green IC before that, which was made by Johnny Rods, who's still alive. He's still running his school in New York.
Okay.
A couple people like reached out to him trying to get him to make belts, but like I don't think he's not in the condition to like make belts. But somebody said that like he claims he has like a few belts that he made that are still somewhere around. So maybe somebody will pop one of those free one day and we can see them. But yeah, that belt got destroyed. Well, one of the two got destroyed. WWE has the other one. And then, Tito had the classic IC, or we call it the classic IC, but yeah, Tito Tito doesn't get a lot of credit for a lot of the stuff he did,
A
but
lot of stuff he
No.
did. Period.
it was, you
Tito
know,
was
he was ahead of his time. Like somebody that another 10 years, like if he could have a feud with Shawn Michaels at his peak, they could have went back and forth, I think, a lot more.
Okay, I can see
But
that. Yeah,
but as he said, it's the workhorse belt, and Tito was a workhorse.
he was a
Yeah.
workhorse.
I ain't ashamed to say it. I was a fan of El Matador.
Trigger, you've been on one all night, bro.
Whatever. I loved El Matador, man. He come out with the bull
Ole.
Arriba! I'm gonna just be quiet.
Thank you. So there's one big question that wants to be asked. And I'm glad we have you on here to ask. And like we said before we came on air, man, the floor is yours. And be real, be raw about it, because that's the one thing we love about this hobby. Everybody don't like everybody. We had two guests on earlier that openly admitted we didn't like each other at one point, and we don't even know why. Like, there's a lot of infighting inside the hobby, and for a lot of people, nobody knows why. But Trigger has a question, and I'm very interested because I've been a part of Belt Talk on Facebook for a little longer than I care to admit I had a Facebook, honestly. I've been in there for a while, so I've seen it all in there. But Trey, go ahead, bro, because this is gonna be interesting.
So I like to ask a lot of. They may not be hard questions. They may be easy to answer, but they may be hard topics for other people to touch on.
Other people.
Yeah, I think you mainly touched on it as you were speaking about the IWGP and the different version belts. I think, or the question would be, how do you feel about belts causing so much controversy in the business? It may be your belt, whether that's good controversy, bad, and then how it affects you as an individual with dealing with other people. Because as Carlito said, there's going to be talks and belt groups and talks all over the world saying, "Oh, well, I just don't agree with that." Like, how do you feel about that, especially about your work is so pristine, and some people may feel a different way about it?
Well, I don't think my work is prestigious as some other people's works, and
It is.
Like everything.
It is.
There's some stuff. Well, I never claimed to be the best belt maker. There's certain things that I can do better than others. There's certain things that I can improve on. There's certain stuff that I'm abysmal at. That's why I try to stay. I avoid it, and I try to stay to my strengths. Like everybody as a belt maker at first is kind of compared to how well you can replicate a Reggie leather or Jamar leather or Dave leather. And I think those are like important to learn as the fundamentals, but at some point you have to expand as a belt maker beyond that and start trying your own things and start developing your own style. And you'll see other belt makers doing things like main event belts now, like they have a different color or a different shaped tip. And Wildcat moved the snaps closer, has a different style tip, does a different style beveling on every belt. Ron in Red Leather, he's starting to do things with logos and the banners between the snaps, as everybody's starting to get like their kind of calling card to, you don't have to look at the stamp on who made it. You could start telling by, me, I'm doing geometric patterns in the snap boxes and trying to use leather stamps that are either custom made or very old, no longer made. That way it makes it a little bit more difficult for people to copy and replicate, but at the same time using a tool that might have been used 40 years ago for a saddle in a different side of the country, and now I bought it and now I'm using it on a wrestling belt. So I'm more into it now for like the artistic portion, and I'm taking orders I'm only taking orders where I have freedom to do more of what I want. When I was just getting into it, when I was young, you're just kind of happy people are calling you, so they can hand you whatever they want, and you're just shaking your head, smiling, saying yes, yes, yes. And belts aren't my full-time job. I do it as a hobby. It kind of became a major portion of my life, but I'm at the point now where I don't need to do it. I'm only going to do it if I want to do it. I'm only going to work with the people I want to work with, because trying to appease everyone quality suffers all along the board. You're making everybody okay, but you're not making anybody too happy. And it's like, you know what? Let me just focus on these few people, do the belts the way they want them, give them a little bit more attention. And, you know, when the time comes, I'll cut back on my orders, and I might say, all right, anybody in the board, you know, I'm taking 3 commissions this year. Like, let me know what you want, because I got a family, I got another job, I got real life to deal with. Like, belts aren't my full-time thing, and you know, unfortunately, the money isn't there consistently enough to say I can make this my full-time job.
Right.
Gotcha.
But
Gotcha.
Going back to the other portions of your question, I'm sorry, I'm really long-winded.
No, you're fine.
No, you fine, man. Listen, I told you we're just gonna be here like this. Like,
Right.
Right. You go back to like, why is there so much infighting? There's a lot of layers to it.
we gotta focus on
And
it.
we've had disputes in the belt community since day one. All right, I joined the belt community in 1998 in Yahoo forums. There was 2 opposing groups. There was Flair for the Gold, and there was Championship Belt Collectors. And Flair for the Gold was all of the people who were fans of Reggie Parks and Dave Milliken. And then Championship Belt Collectors was more friendly towards Jamar and Championship Leather and a lot of the newer people who tried to make a name for themselves back then. You know, one group was, we respect copyrights, we respect trademarks, we don't steal from other people's designs. And then the other group was, we're just here about belts, so we don't care who owns what. I want a copy of it, so let's just get me a copy of it. And you know, this is 1998. It's the same issues we're having now, and I think it kind of comes down to the haves and have-nots. It has to do with people saying, I worked hard, I saved for years to get and afford this belt, and then, you know, you just go out and rush and get a cheap knockoff from Pakistan, and you try to act like your belt is the same thing as mine, but on an artistic level, they're 2 totally separate things. Whereas you just put them on the shelf side by side, they might be visually similar, but collecting belts to one person is a little bit different than that other person. And then we get into the Facebook groups now, where everybody can open their own group and get a few hundred people in a few hours. So everybody has their chance to play, you know, belt god and dictate how they want to see fit. And there's nothing wrong with that. Like, make your own group. You know, there's a lot of people with a lot of different ideas and designs of ideas of what they want the community to be. So if you can find people who are like-minded, you know, go ahead, have at it. But all of these different groups splinter off, and you have the difference of opinions, and then you have people trying to fight for power. So that's where I think a lot of the fighting happens between people in this group and people in that group, where, you know, don't listen to this person. This person's only been around for a few weeks. They don't know what they're talking about. Well, don't trust this person. This person lies about what he sells to this person. It's like, it's the same drama. The names change, the group names change. It's just the same stuff over and over again. It's circular. So, you know, you might be feuding with one person 1 week, and then 2 weeks later, somebody else comes along, and now you and the guy you hated 2 weeks ago are now working together to take down this new guy who's trying to steal from the both of you. And it's it's high school, and it's like, I'm over that. I don't want to deal with it. I don't want to be a part of it. Now, I moderate the largest belt group on Facebook, and I do have moderators to help, but like, half the time I'm getting messages from people complaining about this or that. It's like, I'm not dealing with it. You know, some of you guys need to realize, like, it's a hobby. It's supposed to have fun. All right. If you're doing something where you can't sleep at night because you might be doing something illegal or stealing money from people in order to, you know, further your belt collection, like, you're not in the right hobby. Like, just move on to something else. And I think there's a lot of people who are involved in the Facebook groups that just are there just trying to make a quick buck, and then as soon as they can fleece somebody, they're gone. And I I don't want to lump all of the Pakistani belt makers into the group as, you know, all being bad or being bootleggers, but what you have to understand is there's not a lot of money there. So when you have, when you have a company like Classic Shields, who's had all of this success because they found a way to make American style belts at a comparable price, lower quality, but they can make it fast and they'll steal anyone's design. They're doing tremendous business. Now they have I think at least a year wait. Okay, well,
Yeah.
there's 20 other factories in that same town, and they all do the same stuff. They cast metal, they make awards, they make trophies, they make plaques. The people 2 blocks down, they're all making leather goods and T-shirts. They all do the same thing. But then when they see one person starting to make a little bit more money, getting new machines, a bigger warehouse, well, what's going on? Like, we're all doing the same stuff. Why are you getting so popular? Well, I'm making wrestling belts. What's a wrestling belt?
And then
Spreads down the block, and now you have 40 new belt companies pop up asking to be part of your group. And if you're in one of these groups that just lets everybody in, you make one post and then you have 15
brother,
DMs.
I make DM me, brother. I make good. Like,
right.
Oh my God.
Right. But when I'm vocal being against Pakistani bootlegs, I'm not
He is.
diminishing the people there. I know, you know, things are rough there and you're struggling. You're just trying to make ends meet, but you have to go about it a certain way. Like, you could take that greater portion of money up front and then fade out and die off and be done with it and move on to whatever other manufacturing you're going to be doing in 2 years from now. Or you could take a little bit of time, make a little bit less money, do it the right way, and then slowly gain popularity and become an established company, and you'll make more money in the long run like that. And some of these people are just chasing the quick buck, and I think everybody in the hobby needs to be a little bit more aware of what's going on out there and to be a little bit more safe when sending money to people who just sell them lies, basically.
I so caught up in the industry, they get so caught up in trying to sell certain that is.
Technical. It's his turn. He is being glitched out into the multiverse.
The multiverse.
Sorry. But my last question would be, I see you had the UFC titles behind you. How do you feel about those title designs for you? Is it a respectable design for you? It's just like, you know.
And even the new ones too. Like, right. Just because I remember, and that was a really good question to ask, bro. Because I remember before I really started following UFC super heavy, I remember picking up a UFC magazine, or it was a sports magazine, and there was a champion on the cover. And then I went and picked up another magazine a week later, and there was a champion on the cover with the same belt. And I was like, oh, when did he lose? For years, they just had the same belt across every division. And it was like, why? But how do you feel about the UFC designs?
The UFC designs are one of the big influences on me getting involved in belts. Just as much as Reggie, but Jamar did from a totally different aspect. So I remember watching the early UFC events on pirated cable. You know, my friend had a black box. He'd call us up. We go over there and we're watching UFC. It's like, well, what's UFC? Oh, it's like it's WWF, but they really hit each other. Like, all right, cool, I'm in. And then UFC 1, within 30 seconds, you see a guy get his tooth kicked out, and you're like, oh shit.
You're like, oh,
yeah. So, wow. Yeah, this ain't wrestling. This ain't. But those designs, so like they didn't start having the belts till
like the
UFC
super
5.
Fight designs,
right? When they started, and those were mid '90s is considered like early Jamar, when he started moving away from like the sheet metal and started using acid engraved plate, like modern or what then became modern style belt making. So a lot of his designs are takes on Reggie Park's art, unfortunately. But you know, talking to both Reggie and Jamar, Reggie really didn't mind Jamar using a lot of his designs, and then once Reggie started making more of a business from it, he started getting people in his ear telling him, "Hey, you know, you've got to protect your designs, or you're going to lose the ability to make money from them." So, you know, Jamar kind of did it in that sweet spot where Reggie kind of gave him his blessing to use. So, you know, we look at. I keep turning the wrong way, but
I do that all the time.
you look at the early UFC belts. Where am I here? All right,
Yep, right there.
The cruiserweight belt, but it's based off of the Reggie Parks United World Class United design. All right, and you know, obviously, the Jamar United States is based off of the Reggie IC. So you can see a lot of influence with Jamar's work going back to Reggie's work. But you know, being a kid back then, I didn't know what Jamar and Reggie was. I just saw the Ulti guy, the Ultiman, and I was like, that's a cool logo. I like that thing.
That's a really big belt. So wait, is that just like the World Super Fight belt?
That is the UFC 9 Super Fight belt that Dan Severn won.
Okay.
And the Beast.
Yep.
Beast. Wow. And who was and he did great things in wrestling in terms of the crossover appeal, you know, with WWF for a little while, a little NWA. But that was actually really good for wrestling as a whole, because no matter how much they tried to escape, WWE and UFC were gonna be synonymous. There's pageantry, you know, there's entertainment, you know, because even like with Chuck Liddell, who was never the greatest fighter, but one of my favorites because he had the charisma. He reminded me of WWE superstars. So I was like, well, I like this guy. Tito coming in, Tito was a heel. Tito was the early years of the Randy Ortons and the Kevin Owens, where he was a bad guy, but it was cool to like this bad guy. So it was like, I'm gonna like you. Like, okay.
It's always been that way, and it's weird because I think I've been into MMA from a very young age. Followed it. Like, it seems like Dana White always had animosity towards Vince McMahon.
Always.
But once Dana started, Vince set the game plan and the game plan on how to build a company based on selling pay-per-views. And as soon as Dana started doing things that Vince already did, that's when UFC blew up. And I think Dana kind of hates how much influence Vince either indirectly or directly had on copying his ideas to an extent and making UFC better, because you know you had Tito coming out with the big octagon entrance, which everybody loved. You know, he comes out with the Mexican US flag, comes out to Limp Bizkit break stuff, big pyro. Like that, that's the perfect mix to me of MMA and UFC, or excuse me, MMA and pro wrestling. Like, you get the pageantry, you get all that. You know, you get Tito digging the grave, doing the grave digger, or doing that. Like, I get all that, but once the bell rings, it's a real fight, and that's what I like. Like, you can't sell fights off of two guys from Europe whose names you can't pronounce, and you have 600 people on a card, or excuse me, 600 people signed, and you're having 30 people fight every Friday. Like, you can't keep track of that. That's what these overinflated rosters in both UFC and WWE, like, everybody's talented, but if they don't have enough time to show, they can't develop a following, they can't gain.
And see, that's like now. It's hard to follow UFC, and I hate being that old guy because I
can't follow it.
I hate it because, like, I understand the guys who left after Attitude Era when Rock and Austin, because it's like, you know, the last vestige of me holding on to UFC was John Jones when he was still at his height. Lyoto Machida, Shogun, Rampage, all those guys are gone. It's like these new guys, like, they're just as talented, but it's like you lost. I don't want to say you lost the entertainment value of it, but it's just like, I'm not. Once Connor left, BJ Penn, like, some of the names that helped transition it to becoming what UFC is are gone, and it's like, well,
GSP,
okay. Yeah, GSP, Matt Hughes, like Matt Serra, even for a little while. Like, there was some names there where it was like, okay, this is really exciting. I want to watch this guy fight. And now it's like, other than Adesanya, And if you're lucky to see a John Jones fight come up again anytime soon, that's really it.
Right. Those are the parallels between wrestling and MMA.
Yeah.
So there was a time where WWE and some people even say AEW right now, they're signing a lot of wrestlers and they're not using the ones they already have. UFC did the same thing. UFC signed all of these fighters
from Pride, WEC.
Right. Some of them get to fight maybe once or twice a year. Like when we were watching UFC earlier, there was a UFC pay-per-view every 2 months. You had like a top 10 list in each division. There was 4 or 5 divisions depending on when you watched, and you pretty much knew every fighter on the card. It's like
I miss those days.
There's some guys who never won a championship, never came close to winning a championship, but they fought on the undercards of those UFC events, and they had good fights. They had, they future stars beat them, but they still were able to make a career. Now you can go 2 losses in the UFC and be cut, and then they might make you sit out the rest of your contract. All this other stuff, and like there's an event every Friday. There's 3 pay-per-views. I'm like, you need ESPN Plus, and then you need to pay the pay-per-view on top of that.
Doing all that, man.
And now all these, they're making it harder to watch. Like I can't watch baseball on free television anymore. And you make it, pay-per-view model. Well, now it's like, you need an Apple Plus subscription for this game. You need Netflix for this one. If you want to watch this game, this fight's on this.
I just seen something crazy about the NFL. They were just like the NFL will be offered like 7 days out of the week when it comes back.
Out of the week when it comes to the Sunday ticket.
Prime Video, all them jumps.
I can't be invested into whatever sport or fight or product you're selling me if you make it so difficult for me to try to keep up with it. Like I want to be a fan. I want to give you my money. I want to be invested. Yeah. If I have to jump through all these hoops just to be included, and I'm paying you on top of that, count me out.
I'm not doing all that.
No.
I said that with TNA last week.
And that's what I said, unfortunately, because TNA does a lot of stuff right now. Once they downscale, TNA does some good stuff, but it's hard to get a following because people don't have the channel. They don't want to go out of the way to find it. That's just like, and we're getting ready to wrap it up with you, bro, but I know we had a really good conversation amongst us about AEW. And the 2 things I talk most about when I talk about AEW, and I'm going to segue into what you've done for them design-wise and New Japan, but the 2 things I talk most about with AEW are, number 1, the lack of a streaming option. Because if there are new fans who want to get into AEW or returning wrestling fans, I don't know where to tell them to go watch Danielson versus MJF or Page and Omega versus the Young Bucks or this Blood and Guts. The lack of and don't get me wrong, I understand there's still a newer company, but in today's day and age, you have to have some type of streaming. The lack of a catalog that you have that we can have access to is harming them more than anything.
Right.
Because there's been a lot of great feuds. Like they're not perfect, but they're not supposed to be 5 years in, 6 years in. But there's a lot of stuff that we can't go back and watch.
Right. And I think that same thing is what hurts New Japan as far as their expansion into the United States. They've tried with
New Japan World.
Their app is so frustrating to use. And then when they were available on TV, it's usually best of shows or clips, and it's
on ASX at 11 o'clock on a Friday night, and I'm like,
if there's something I need to watch, I'll go on YouTube.
That's it.
Somebody's got it up, even if I have to watch it mirrored.
You gotta watch it mirrored in a smaller screen with a little bit of
Yeah, like if I could pay you $5 a month and watch everything streaming, that's fine. But when I want to use the app and it doesn't work, or how can pirates provide a better quality feed of your material than the people who own the material?
Because I have it, but not I'm not spending $50 a month on an AEW pay-per-view. I'm not. And I love the company. I'm wishing them nothing but success. I go to shows, I buy the merch, I'm doing everything else, but I'm not giving you, because the model is outdated at this point. Right. WWE, like as much as we call them a monopoly, there's been positive things they've done that, I'm sorry, the WWE Network worked. Peacock, yep. It's still not, the user interface on it is still not as good as the network, but it works. TNA Plus, you let TNA get an app on you that's just And I'm like, how does that work when you have the Warner Media partnership? Like, it just doesn't make sense. But also with the belts, and that's why I brought it up, because they have a lot with Ring of Honor, and you featuring New Japan belts and your roster of belts. They have. I can't say they don't have enough television, because you get 5 hours a week out of them, but it's just like, plus you get, the Honor Club Plus and all that. They have way too many belts, because I know for you helped had a design in the TNT Championship, right? The blinged out version.
I did. Well, I didn't design it, but I did make 2 copies for
You
them.
made 2 copies. Okay, you made
Sammy
copies of
Guevara
it.
used it. A couple of other people used it after Sammy as well. Made Miro's TNT.
Wait, you made Miro's?
Yeah.
That is the best version. I mean, next to the Kobe, but I have a Kobe Bryant sleeve on my arm. I'm not Kobe. But that's my favorite TNT title. That white with that green and gold. I mean, other than the fact that it represents the team that this guy roots for, it was beautiful. That was a gorgeous design, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
One of the designs. So they said Miro wanted a custom belt. Miro was doing his thing where he was wearing like Gucci and all these other.
Yeah.
So I was like, why don't we do a Gucci strap for him? So the original TNT was white strap with the green band and then the red band. And then we had it all mocked up. We had it. They sent it to legal. They're like, if we make this into an action figure, Gucci will sue us.
Oh,
so I was like, okay.
Okay.
But then they're selling MJF action figure.
But then the Triple B with the Burberry scarf, like
I'm kind of like, what's up? Like maybe they talked to 2 different people in legal, or they were just being a little bit too protect. I don't know, but yeah, Miro's belt was supposed to be Gucci.
The AEW women's that we actually like, because I'm sorry, but that Riho version was terrible. And I know, and this was about the conversation we had earlier about people not liking designs. I'm sorry, but that little teeny. It almost looked like a mini that was just made to real life. But the version that they have now, you had a hand in that one, correct?
Right. Yep. There's a whole story behind that I can't tell.
Oh, okay.
Sometime in the future, when
trying to get sued,
when that NDA comes up, because they're expiring nowadays like crazy. So maybe we might get you back on.
It's nothing scandalous.
Oh, okay.
Nobody's gonna get in trouble for it. It's just
we'll talk.
It's just like a really crazy, amazing story about how things never turn out as they're intended.
The New Japan strong women's, strong open weight, and strong tag team titles.
Yep.
Those were you.
Yep.
I love that open weight, man. That's fire. That
was the first belt I did for New Japan.
Really?
So I made a belt for Bojangles, the restaurant.
I saw it.
It's a first spinner belt.
I'm in North Carolina, so I saw it.
Right. I only see Bojangles a few times a year when I travel, but the spicy chicken biscuits, where it's at, I made a spinner, the biscuits in the middle, and it spins. And New Japan picked that design. They're like, we don't want it to spin, but we like that design.
Wow.
Originally, they were talking about getting rid of the United States belt back then. They're like, all right, the New Japan strong belt is going to kind of replace the United States belt, and that's what we're going to be using.
I love that belt. That's one of my favorite belts.
Then the pandemic happened, so that prevented a lot of because right before the pandemic, the LA dojo was, having a lot of shows, and they were bringing talent back and forth between Japan and Los Angeles. And then COVID hit, and they had to do all those tapings, and I think it kind of really lost a lot of the momentum originally intended for that belt. But yeah, they liked the design, and they said, can we do it again for the tags, and do it again for the women's?
And the women's. And then you did the global championship for New Japan too, right?
Yep.
Jesus. Yeah. So I have a question for you real quick. And we get ready to wrap up. The NWA Women's World that they have currently, did you get that idea from that Hogan belt with the picture of him in the middle of it, or
no? So that belt was based off of the original NWA Women's belt from all the way back to the 30s or
okay.
Well, if you go back then, like there was the men's and there was the women's. They were both the same design, and depending on the pictures you find, you can find them with their original use I think they were like Ohio or regional, and then they put when NWA bought the territory, they put the NWA plate over it. So that was the women's belt style that Mildred Burke held when she was NWA women's champion.
Mm-hmm.
So when they came to me for that, they sent me these old black and white pictures of it, and I knew the belt. I was like, yeah, originally it was a gold belt on a red strap, and that's what I wanted to do. I was like, all right, let's do gold belt, red strap, because this is what Billy wanted, Billy Corrigan.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, but I don't want it on a red strap. I want it white. Okay. I don't want gold. I want silver.
Silver.
So you want silver on white. Can I add black paint? Yes, you can add black paint. Okay. Red stones. Okay.
Red stones.
Okay. We'll make it work. Like that's again, we compromise. Like I can do a red strap. Personally, I hate doing white straps. White straps, they show all the dirt. As soon as you start flexing them, they show the crack.
Like that Intercontinental you got behind you.
Right. And after a while, if you start handling them and abusing them too much, depending on the type of leather paint you use, it can start cracking and coming off. So I try to advise people against using white, but they tend to be used a lot for the women's belts.
Yeah.
And, luckily, the way I've been putting on my whites and light colored acrylics with the airbrush seem to make a big difference because they haven't been chipping off and cracking like some of the earlier ones done with like a sponge brush, for example.
Ron, are you about to pull out the women's? Yep. So, because some belts look great on white. Like I have I have a white fan dude. I get everywhere I take it. I have a white big gold, and they love it. And they're like, well, "Where'd you get it?" And I'm just like, some belts look good on white, some don't. But like the NXT UK Women's Championship on that white, it was phenomenal. I loved it. I thought that was a great design and the use of color and everything they had on it. But like you said, using white on a belt, you're handling it. And for they say some of these superstars are really rough with these belts, tossing them around or whatever.
But WWE was smart with those because when you go back and you look at the women's belt Trey had, and you look at the NXT UK women's belt and the WWE women's belt, the Raw and SmackDown ones, all the white ones, it's not a white strap. It's pearl essence mixed with the white. So I don't know if they were able to replicate it on the replicas, but if you look at like a Wildcat social media, the white, it's not a pure white. You'll see pearl scent accents.
Oh wow! Okay, I had no idea.
Kind of breaks it up a little bit more. So, it's one of those like things where, again, it doesn't come across on television properly unless you're looking at the belt right away. You have to really see it in your face.
See it in person at a meet and greet or something. If they have the actual and not the travel belt or the TV type. Okay, got you.
Yep.
Last question before we let you go, man. I know we talked about your favorite design. What are your top 3 designs though? So we'll say top 4 because we already have your Intercontinental. What are your other 3 designs that you just they jar memories when you see them? They were what you were looking for when you were looking for replicas or ringed views at all. What are your other 3 that you just love?
The V4, New Japan.
Okay, I knew. Yes, yes.
Winged Eagle.
Winged Eagle. Okay. Are you a dual or an all gold?
At first I was all gold. Then I started developing a like for the dual.
Mm-hmm.
I have a dual, but
because dual was first, and then Brett got the all gold, right? And then they carried on after that, right?
Well, Hogan, Yoko, Flair all held the all gold.
Okay, they were all gold. Okay.
You start getting into the leather cut preferences. There's like a whole group of people who like what's called the round cut, where the eagle tips don't stick out past the leather.
I need my eagle tips. No, I like my eagle tips. I like mine.
So,
okay, so we have.
So those are 3, and if I had, that was 4, and if I had to do a 5th, I would say it's probably the V3, which is vastly underrated, just because I think it wasn't used as long, and New Japan wasn't getting as much love in the States.
Did Lesnar hold that one?
Yes.
Yeah,
Lesnar, Shinsuke Nakamura.
Naka.
Kurt Angle. Kurt Angle got a lot of visibility in TNA when
he was with it.
Belt collector gimmick. So, but then it was used as the Inoki belt when Brock technically stole it from New Japan.
Hey, listen, what were they gonna do? Is Brock Lesnar like, you're not gonna go get it because it's
Well, yeah, I mean, I've had people tell me the stories. Like I was the person, one of the guys, like, yeah, I had to get the belt back from Brock Lesnar and give it to Inoki. And yeah, how'd you do that? It's like Brock was very nice about it. It's like, really?
oh,
Like
wow.
you hear a lot of Brock Lesnar stories that make you think like I wouldn't want to look at him the wrong way.
Right.
And then there's people who are like, yeah, like once you break the ice with him, he's really nice. So it's like I'd
See,
like
that's how it is with
people
Scott
you'd
Steiner.
like to meet, I think.
Yeah, that's how it was with Scott Steiner. Like I heard so many terrible Scott Steiner stories, and I was like, I never want to meet him. And then I met him, and he was one of my favorite meet and greets of all time. He was so chill. But I mean, but everybody just, even with the wrestlers, celebrities, they all have bad days. So you just may catch somebody on a bad day.
Right.
The whole whoa, don't bring up Booker. We don't talk about that on this pod. Anyway, yeah, that's a whole other story for another episode, man. We genuinely and sincerely appreciate you for coming through and blessing us with this knowledge, man. Beltsbydan.com, on X and IG, Belts by Dan. Facebook, do not come in this group posting pictures of your fan dues and your Pakistani boots because you're gonna get roasted by like 200 people.
You can post your fan dues.
So fan dues are cool. Okay, good.
Fan dues are cool.
Okay, fan dues are cool. So with the fan dude with the big gold, is that technically not a boot?
It's not a boot.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
Crumrine only owns the they own the trademark to the floral design in it, but only done handmade. So a 2D etched copy, they don't have any problems with people doing it. If you're doing a handmade carved one using that floral pattern, then they'll go after you.
Y'all hear this? Like,
So,
y'all hear this?
Here's the knowledge.
Listen, as long as it doesn't have a WWE logo in it,
Mhm.
your big gold is fine. Doesn't every belt maker makes their own big gold version. So like,
yeah, that classic Shields is one of the ones though, man. If you're gonna get one, that's Belt Talks new and replica championship belt buy, sell, and trade. You want a group full of knowledge and just overall, if you want to go buy a belt as well and you don't know where to start, you're afraid to go in some of these other belt groups where they have some sellers who are scam artists or selling eBay copies or whatever, join the group, come learn and participate and love the hobby the way we do, man. In his email, beltfandan@gmail.com. If y'all want to try and get a commission, understand something. We didn't get to talk about the ring use prices tonight, but your pockets got to be deep because whew, Jesus, I've seen a couple that have made me second look, and I'm like, I might hit the Powerball one day, and then I'm gonna be your number one customer if I get there. Other than that, that's about it, man.
Pre-owned Civic ring used belt. Pre-owned Civic,
I mean, that's about right, genuinely. But no, then is everything
legitimately like that? I just put buyers in contact with sellers because I can't keep that stuff either. Like,
gotcha.
Some of these belts, like I can't have a car sitting, the price of a new car sitting on my shelf. Like the people who collect used, they're at a different level of comfortability in life, and more power to them.
Nothing wrong with it. If you got it, spend it. Hey, listen, if you got it. Anything you want to say specifically to your fans or anyone who knows of you in the hobby, man, or just a message to the hobby in general? Because like I said, man, it's people like you that keep it going, and the wealth of knowledge you pass on and possess, that's going to matter 10, 20, 30 years from now when our kids are collecting belts and talking about it. So anything in particular you want to say, man?
I'm happy where despite all the infighting and all the groups, I'm happy where the hobby is. I understand, things change with time, and most people tend to think I have an outdated way of looking at it, but I get both sides of it, and I'm just happy with where the hobby is right now, and I just hope that things just keep growing and there's more options for collectors as we get more people with more technological backgrounds available saying, hey, can we 3D print a belt? Can we 3D print and plate a belt? Like stuff that I might not never even thought about. Like we need to expand the hobby. You get fresh faces to look at stuff, fresh minds, fresh ideas, and I think that'll drive the innovation. And 10 years from now, we might have belts with transforming plates or LED screens on it, or whoever. Like, we don't know what they're going to be. Like, somebody out there has the idea. Like, do it. But if you're thinking it, do it.
Gotcha. Well, man, I mean, I don't know how you can't even follow that up, but I don't even know how anybody could not like this dude, man. Because listen to everything. Go back and re-listen to everything that we talked about tonight. And if you're new to the hobby, or if you're an OG in the hobby, man, you don't get opportunities to talk to too many people who are willing to talk with the hobby as knowledgeable as Dan, man. So from Beyond the Bell, Carlito Cannon, Mr. 211, Trigger Trey, Blackout Jones, the Carolina Wrestling Cartel, dude, we salute you and we say thank you for joining us tonight, man. We're looking forward to doing this again, maybe, and having some ring used conversation as well, and even with a couple of the superstars we know. Like, I know a couple of guys that have had possession of the belts that you have in your collection now, and it's dope. But you are definitely one of the godfathers of the hobby, and we appreciate you, man. And y'all already know what it is, man. We'll catch y'all next time. Same BTB time, same BTB channel. You gonna give him one? You gonna give him one, Trigger, or are you? Yeet.
I guess.
I'll let y'all later, man.